Hey, Mommy. Who's the lady behind Daddy? At the sleepy words of my daughter, I froze.
Who is behind him? What are you talking about, Eve?
I knew I shouldn't ask any further, but my mouth moved on its own. Rubbing her eyes and looking drowsy, my daughter pointed at an image on my open laptop. Here! Behind Daddy! I felt even more suffocated at her words. She could see it too. Taking my eyes off my daughter, I glanced at the screen and saw my husband's face, looking more pale than me. He had been boasting about how having an affair made a man more manly, but now he looked pathetic. We were on a video call during his business trip, and we were in the midst of a heated argument about his infidelity. He should be the only person on the screen, but my daughter was pointing to the right side of the image. Summoning my courage, I stared at the window in the background that was visible on the screen. My name is Brianna, and I am a 35-year-old housewife who works part-time. I usually work as a receptionist at a car dealer shop from morning until around evening. I married my husband Sam a few years ago, and now we live together with our daughter Eve. Sam and I have been friends since our school days. He was popular with women even back then, partly because of his handsome face, but also because he was used to dealing with them. For example, whenever I changed my hairstyle or nails, he would notice right away and compliment me. And he was good at being considerate, like carrying heavy stuffs. Because of his personality, Sam always had a girlfriend. So when Sam asked me out to dinner, I was very happy. At the time, Sam had just broken up with his girlfriend and was feeling lonely. That led to us going out together many times and eventually becoming an official couple. At the time, I was proud to be dating Sam, and for a while, I was very happy. One day, I was waiting to meet Sam for our date. He usually arrived early, but that day, he hadn't shown up even after the meeting time had passed. I contacted him to let him know that I had arrived at the meeting place and waited for a while, but he didn't respond. I wondered if he might be feeling unwell, so I headed to the apartment where he lived alone. I pressed the intercom button at the entrance, but there was no answer. I thought maybe he had collapsed inside. Worried, I used the spare key to enter his apartment, but I couldn't find him in the living room or kitchen. I knocked on the bedroom door a few times, but there was no response. So I turned the knob and peeked inside. There was Sam sleeping on the bed, but he wasn't alone. There was another person next to him, with long brunette hair peeking out from under the blanket. The sight is something I still can't forget.
Sam, what is going on?
I shook him awake. At first, Sam seemed confused or still half asleep and didn't seem to understand the situation. Gradually, he woke up, and his face turned pale as he finally realized what had happened.
No, it's just that we were just resting, you know? Nothing happened.
Sam's excuse was so weak it was painful. There is no way you could not have done anything while not wearing clothes. At that moment, I was already planning to break up with him. But from the next day on, Sam kept apologizing and begging for me to come back. He even showed me his phone, saying he had deleted all the women's contacts. Eventually, I was swept away by his passion and decided to reconcile with him. After that, Sam stopped fooling around with other women. Or at least that's what I wish I could say. But he still regularly met with other women and had affairs. Every time, we talked about breaking up, but for some reason, I just couldn't completely cut ties with him. I got used to it and gradually began to think that as long as I could endure it, everything would be fine. Eventually, Sam and I got married, and we finally had a daughter, Eve. Sam truly adored her. After she was born, he stopped seeing other women in a flashy way. But I know that he still goes out to eat with female coworkers, claiming that he has to work overtime. Every time I expressed my displeasure about it. Next year, our daughter will be in elementary school and will become sensitive to many things. So I don't want Sam to do anything that would make her feel uneasy. I've told him this many times. But lately, he's given up and saying things like, I can't help cheating anymore. I'm so fed up with him that I can't even point out his flaws anymore. He's an unbearable husband, but he's the only father our daughter has. I can't do anything that would take her father away from her. One day, when I woke up with a bad headache, there were a lot of things that I needed to do.
Mommy, there's no kindergarten today, so I want to go to the park.
From the morning, my energetic daughter hugged me around my waist and begged me to take her there. I'm sorry, honey. I have a headache today. Can you go with Daddy instead? Sam, you have the day off today, right? While preparing breakfast, I asked Sam. Then Sam, who was sitting on the couch watching TV, suddenly said that he had to take a call and went outside. Just when I thought he wouldn't be long, he came back and started preparing his things, saying that he had suddenly received work. My daughter murmured that she understood, although it was clear that she was disappointed. After waiting for Sam to finish preparing, we all went downstairs with my daughter and headed to the parking lot. Sam uses his car to commute, so we went to see his off at the parking lot. Hey, Sam, is this a scratch? I noticed that the car bumper and a scratch in a place that wasn't there the last time I saw it. Oh, this? I accidentally rubbed it against the wall when I entered a store the other day. Well, that's my fault. And I didn't damage the wall or hurt myself, so it's okay. Sam said it was nothing. Okay, I'm off. Saying that, he got into his car and drove away quickly. It would have been better if he had told me about it earlier. As I was thinking about it, my headache suddenly got worse, and I started to feel cold. Maybe I should go to the hospital. Thinking that, I went to our usual hospital with my daughter. On the way to the hospital, my daughter, who had been sitting quietly, suddenly opened her mouth.
I'm gonna meet a boy at a hospital today. We're gonna be friends.
I thought it happened again. My daughter sometimes blurts out these prophetic things, and they actually come true. One time she said, Grandma must be in pain, poor thing. And the next day, my mother fell and got injured. Another time she said, I'm scared of shaking. And as soon as she hid under the table, the earthquake hit. The examples are endless. At first, I thought it was just a coincidence, but now I accept that it's just how it is. And this time too, my daughter's prediction came true. On our way back from a checkup, in a small square within the hospital grounds, my daughter saw a boy about her age playing alone. As soon as she saw him, she ran up to him and said,
Let's play together.
Yeah. The boy played with my daughter. I watched for a while, but it seemed like the boy's guardian was not nearby. I became curious and asked the boy, Where's your mom?
She's in the hospital. She'll be discharged soon.
He then showed me a photo of himself and a woman who seems to be his mother, smiling at each other. They both looked very happy.
I can't see my mommy while she's in the hospital, so I have this.
The boy looked a little lonely as he said that. When I thought I wanted to say something to him, I saw a middle-aged man running towards us from afar. and a boy left with the man. "Shall we go home then?" When I called out to my daughter, she said happily,
We'll play together again soon.
That night, my condition was somewhat settled. I still had a headache, but it was bearable. As I prepared dinner while playing with my daughter, Sam, who had gone to work, came home. "Hey Sam, can you wait a little longer for dinner?" When I said that, Sam responded with a strangely excited, "Yes, ma'am," and disappeared into the bathroom. I wonder if something good happened at work. A few minutes later, Sam returned from the bathroom humming a tune, and we all sat down to eat together as a family. After taking a bite of the side dish, I asked Sam, "You seem to be in a good mood. Did something good happen?" Sam's eyes shone, as if to say thank you for asking, and he replied, "Actually, I've been assigned to a business trip for the next 6 months. It's kinda sad to be away from you guys, but I'm looking forward to various things." I was very surprised, as he had never been on a business trip for such a long period of time before. Besides, what did he mean by various things to look forward to? Oh yeah? 6 months sounds too long though. But don't you carry the weight too much or anything, okay? Keep in touch, okay? My daughter was listening in on our conversation, so I couldn't be too specific. But I wanted to warn him not to fool around with other women. Sam just vaguely nodded and turned on the TV to evade the issue. To cut the chase, Sam didn't contact me at all during his business trip. Not only did he not contact me, but he hardly ever answered my calls when I tried to reach him. It had been a few months since Sam left for his business trip, and I was reaching my limit. I sent him a message on the messaging app saying to contact me, and he finally called me back. He seemed to be in the middle of work and almost hung up, but I managed to arrange a video call for the next Sunday. I wanted to show my daughter her father's face. On Sunday, Sam finally kept his promise. My daughter was happy to see her father for the first time in a month, and she fell asleep satisfied after only a brief meeting. After that, my husband and I talked for about an hour before we decided to end the call. Just as we were about to say goodbye, our sleeping daughter suddenly woke up and pointed at the screen, saying,
Who is the angry woman behind you?
"Huh? What?" I tried to get a better look and leaned closer to the screen. I noticed a window in the right corner of the screen, and a woman with a terrifying expression was peeking through it. As soon as I saw her, chills ran down my spine, and I let out a scream. Sam also screamed loudly and turned around quickly, and then he collapsed. The woman outside the window made a rattling noise, and she entered the room and yelled at Sam, You married with a child? You've been lying to me all this time, saying you like me. How awful." The woman finished speaking and immediately grabbed Sam's collar. She forced him to stand up and delivered a powerful slap to his face. "Help, Brianna, please," Sam cried out pathetically. To be honest, I felt relieved seeing this scene. I didn't think a cheating man like him would change without something like this happening. It was bad for the deceived women, but he deserved it. That's the punishment you deserved, Sam. I said this and ended the video call. Immediately after, my daughter clung to me. "Go to Daddy. Please, Mommy." "Huh? What's wrong? Daddy will be fine." However, my daughter insisted on her plea with a serious tone.
Daddy is not okay. He's lying down with his eyes closed and not moving.
I had a hunch that it was her usual prophecy. I finally mustered the courage to take my daughter and drive to Sam's hotel. After arriving, as we were walking down the hallway, a woman rushed past us at an incredible speed. I could tell from her appearance that it was the same woman who had slapped Sam earlier. Her face no longer showed any anger, and instead, she seemed more frightened. I left my daughter waiting at the entrance and headed toward the living room alone. Inside, I saw an unfamiliar woman shouting and arguing with Sam. Although the previous woman's slap was intense, this woman was also incredibly fierce and had cornered Sam in the corner of the room. It was crucial to stop her before things got worse. In a hurry, I grabbed the woman from behind and held her in a chokehold, but she resisted fiercely. Suddenly, her arm hit Sam's chin, and he collapsed unconscious on the spot. It was as my daughter had predicted. At that moment, the woman seemed to have regained her composure and finally let go of all her strength. I slowly let go of her and cautiously approached her to speak. I'm not sure what's going on here, but are you also one of his mistress? The woman silently shook her head and finally looked at me. I recognized her face. Do you happen to have a son? My words triggered a strong reaction from the woman.
How do you know?
Just then, my daughter, who was supposed to be waiting in the entrance, appeared.
Is Daddy okay?
She seemed to be worried about Sam.
He's just sleeping. Don't worry.
I reassured her and picked up her in my arms. The woman began to cry and told us her story.
My husband died suddenly last year, and my son and I were both devastated. But recently, we've been slowly getting back on our feet. And then this man drove his car into our yard. He destroyed all the plants my husband had taken care of. But he didn't even apologize. He just ran away. I couldn't forgive him for that.
The woman clenched her fist in frustration. It was the reason why Sam's car bumper had been scratched. Despite being my own husband, he was a terrible person.
So I've been searching for this person to have him apologize. It took so long because I fell ill and had to be hospitalized.
I see. I'm sorry for what my husband did. I lowered my head and apologized. I couldn't help but do so. Then the woman hurriedly said,
You don't need to apologize. Your husband is the one in the wrong. But I feel like I just got over it now.
Is that so? Well, look at his stupid face. Instead of being fixated on such a worthless man, I should also look forward. We both feel refreshed now.
I'm sorry for the trouble.
The woman said that and left the room. I thought about waking him up, but I stopped myself. This man wasn't worth helping. Shall we go home? Just the two of us, okay? Afterwards, I told Sam that I wanted a divorce. There was plenty of evidence of his infidelity, and he was clearly at fault. At first, Sam desperately tried to persuade me not to get a divorce, but it was too late. Besides, he was just all talk, so I couldn't trust him anymore. I hired a lawyer and sent a registered letter to Sam's workplace. Well, he said various desperate things, but of course, I had custody of her daughter. I also requested compensation for damages and child support, which took some time, but at least the matter was resolved. After that, our daughter became a primary school student And as predicted, she met that boy again. He was a year older than her, and even though they were in different grades, they occasionally played together during recess. She said she was going to visit the boy's house next time to help plant new trees in the garden. I hope both my daughter and the boy grow up healthy and strong. I wished for that under the clear blue sky.
No!
I woke up to a tremendous noise and screams. The shaking was so intense that it felt like it reached my bedroom. I checked my phone to see if it was an earthquake, but there was no alert. It was still 4 o'clock in the morning. I calmly tried to figure out what was happening when I heard moaning coming from downstairs. I rushed to the source of the sound and found my mother-in-law collapsed near the staircase with a wine bottle lying beside her. I quickly understand what had happened. My mother-in-law always looked down on me as an uneducated and worthless daughter-in-law, and she drank until she passed out. She must have slipped on an empty wine bottle, lost her footing, and tumbled down the stairs. While I was in shock, my mother-in-law spoke to me in an intimidating voice.
Hey, what are you doing? You're really useless. Stop dawdling and call an ambulance. Don't you understand the situation? I might have broken a bone. I'm sweating bullets. Hurry up.
I panicked and quickly went to get my phone. As I grabbed it, I suddenly realized something. Could it be... My name is Katie. I am a housewife like anyone else. I got married to Tom a few years ago. I met my husband Tim at work. We didn't interact much while I was still at the company, but he approached me when I moved to a different building. We started dating from there, got married, and now here we are. Living with Tim was not flashy, but we were filled with small daily happiness. However, something happened that brought an end to those days. Tim's father, my father-in-law, passed away from a heart attack. He had never had any illnesses before and was in perfect health. No one had expected him to suddenly pass away, so it was a tremendous shock. Tim and my mother-in-law were visibly distressed. I couldn't leave my mother-in-law alone in that state. So after the funeral, Tim and I started living with her. However, my mother-in-law had some twisted characteristics. When we first started living together, she said, "Thank you for living with me." I couldn't even imagine how she must have felt, having been left alone so suddenly. That's why I was determined to support her as much as possible, so that she could heal soon. As time passed, she started smiling more, and she began to regain her strength little by little. But then, an incident occurred during a dinner conversation. We were discussing something we saw on TV, when my mother-in-law laughed at me, as if she was making fun of me. I think it was about some art pieces or something trivial. Apparently, my comment wasn't accurate, and she said,
Oh my, Katie, did you really say that? I've heard that some people make mistakes, but I never thought there could be someone who actually did.
At that time, we all laughed it off. But later on, my mother-in-law began to pry into my educational background. What's your highest level of education? Did you study science or humanities? What were your grades like? To be honest, I only graduated from high school, and my grades weren't particularly outstanding. I was always in the middle of the pack. The high school I attended wasn't an elite school either, just an ordinary public high school. When my mother-in-law heard this, she looked down on me and made a condescending laugh.
If only I had asked about your educational background before you got married. Since you were the woman my son brought, I thought you must have graduated from at least a university. But to think you only have a high school diploma.
I was a bit annoyed, but I tried my best not to show it on my face and endured it. From what I heard, my mother-in-law, as well as my late father-in-law, graduated from a famous university that everyone has heard of. Well, from their point of view, I must have been low educated. However, once you become a member of society, your educational background isn't everything. Your character is tested in countless situations. But ever since then, my mother-in-law's catchphrase for me has been, "This is why high school graduates aren't good enough." She always found something to belittle me about, like how I calculate the cost of shopping, or my knowledge of current events in politics and economics. Her criticism about my low education even extended to things like not liking my cooking or how I do my cleaning and laundry. Why can't you understand what I'm saying? Oh, right. You only graduated from high school, so you can't even understand words properly. It's really pitiful to have no education like you. Every time she said something like that, I wanted to retort. But whenever I showed even a hint of opposition, my mother-in-law would say something like this. "Are you saying that to me, who has been grieving for my husband? Do you have any empathy?" After being told this, I couldn't say anything anymore. However, these kinds of days continued, and I was nearing my mental limit. I thought about asking my husband to talk to his mother for me. The first time I confided in him, he said to me, "Katie, it's not your fault. Leave it to me." I wonder how much of those words of him meant to me. As promised by my husband, the bullying from my mother-in-law stopped for a while. But after a few weeks, my mother-in-law started to take out her anger on me even worse than before. Since she was upset about being reprimanded by Tim, she didn't just criticize my cooking, but also threw away everything I put on the dinner table right in front of me. "I keep telling you that your cooking is terrible, didn't I? Why don't you understand? I've been telling you over and over again, so why don't you get it?" When she was in a bad mood, she would even say things like this. "You can't even cook. Yet, you want to take my son away from me? This low-educated, immoral woman. Do you have any morals at all?" My mother-in-law was beyond reason. Whatever I did, it seemed that nothing was to her liking. As her abusive words became more intense, I turned to my husband for advice more and more frequently. But this time, I had started to speak up against her insults to some extent. "Please don't judge me based on my education alone." But no matter what I say, it doesn't seem to have any effect on my mother-in-law. My husband tried to talk to her and calm her down several times. But yesterday, he finally said something like this. "Hey, if mom is saying those things, maybe the problem is with you, Katie. I admit that mom is being hard on you, but maybe it's because you don't understand things properly. If that's the case, then it's pointless for me to try to help you. You should handle it on your own." Meanwhile, my husband has been spending less and less time at home. He says he's busy with work, but he's probably just tired of being caught up in our fights. As a result, I'm becoming more and more isolated from my family. The harassment is only getting worse. My mother-in-law's swearing has become more frequent, possibly due to her drinking. She didn't drink as much when my father-in-law was alive, but now she seemed to be using alcohol to cope with her loss, drinking every day in her upstairs room. I'm constantly being summoned like a servant, being told to bring ice, dispose the empty bottles, and prepare snacks for her drinking sessions. As a result, my sleeping schedule is getting later and later. However, my husband also comes home late at night more often. He smells of alcohol and perfume just like my mother-in-law. Day after day, I'm being bullied by my mother-in-law and abandoned by my husband. And my mental state is finally reaching its limit. On this day, just like any other, my mother-in-law went back to her room after dinner to start drinking again. She yelled at me to bring her more wine, but I wondered why I had to obey her. At this point, there is no kindness left in me to try and stop her from drinking too much. I pretended not to hear and remained silent. However, my mother-in-law just kept getting more and more hysterical, without showing any sign of coming downstairs.
You can hear me, right? You damn daughter-in-law. I'm telling you to bring more alcohol. What language do I have to speak for you to understand me?
No matter what she said, I didn't react and just blocked my ears with my earphones, listening to music at maximum volume. Occasionally, I heard the sound of my mother-in-law throwing something outside the room, but I pretended not to notice. She can do whatever she wants. About an hour later, I took off my earphones. That the house was now quiet. As I approached the stairs and listened closely, I could hear her snoring slightly. Maybe if I didn't do anything, she would just pass out and go to sleep. In the end, she just wants to use me conveniently by finding excuses for everything. That's all there is to it. If this is how it's going to be, then, starting tomorrow, I will ignore my mother-in-law's calls. I just have to endure a few more unpleasant days. The next morning,
No!
I woke up to the sound of a loud crash and a scream, as if the room was shaking. At first, I thought it might be an earthquake, but after looking around, I realized that wasn't the case. Instead, I heard groaning coming from nearby. I followed the sound to find my mother-in-law crumpled at the bottom of the stairs, with an empty wine bottle beside her. It was clear what had happened. She must have slipped on the bottle and tumbled down the stairs. Normally, I would have collected empty bottles when I was cold, so there would have been no such danger. As I watched her writhing in pain, a strange feeling washed over me. It was as if I felt she was receiving divine punishment. My thoughts were interrupted by her barking orders at me, her tone one of intimidation.
Hey, what are you doing? You are really useless. Stop doddering and call an ambulance. Don't you understand the situation? I might have broken a bone. I'm sweating bullets. Hurry up.
I told her I understand, and I went to grab my phone. As I did, I had a sudden idea. A few minutes later, I returned to my mother-in-law's side.
Hey, how long do you think it'll take for the ambulance to come?
She was pale-faced and sweating profusely, writhing in agony. But there was something I had to tell her. My mother-in-law was waiting for me to speak. I'm sorry, I don't understand your language very well, so I can't call an ambulance.
What?
My mother-in-law looked at me, perplexed and confused about what was happening. But then, she quickly regained her composure and started yelling at me.
What are you joking around? At a time like this? Don't you understand this is no laughing matter? My whole body hurts. It could be life-threatening. Don't you understand my pain? You stupid daughter-in-law.
I'm sorry. I'm not very smart. I don't understand. I don't know what to say. I'm sorry. I can't do it.
I continued speaking in broken and unintelligent sentences.
My mother-in-law started to worry that I wasn't going to call an ambulance after all. Her tone softened as she started to stumble over her words.
No, I mean, I need an ambulance. So, Katie...
She was clearly trying to figure out what to do, perhaps imagining what might happen if she left there alone without being treated. Finally, my mother-in-law began to cry and plead with me to call an ambulance.
Katie, I'm sorry. It was all my fault. I apologize for treating you so badly all this time. I won't make fun of you anymore. So, please. I still want to live.
My mother-in-law cried and wailed. I retorted, "Well, you should have said that from the beginning, if you understood. But anyway, I've already called an ambulance." Right after my words, the distorted sound of a siren started to be heard. Then the ambulance arrived, and my mother-in-law was transported to the hospital. After that, my mother-in-law was hospitalized for the day for a checkup just to be sure. She seemed embarrassed about shouting, "I still want to live," over just a bruise, and couldn't meet my eyes. My husband suddenly appeared in the hospital room and asked, "Is Mom okay?" After he finished worrying about my mother-in-law, he glared at me and said,
"How could Mom go through something like this when you were home? What's the point of being a housemaker, Katie?"
Sighing, I thought, "Is it my fault again?" and took out a voice recorder from my pocket and played it. It contained all the abusive language that my mother-in-law used toward me all this time. Some recordings were made when she was sober, while others were made when she was drunk. There was no shortage of variation.
"So what?"
My husband shouted in disbelief.
"So what? Can't you figure it out for yourself? Do I really have to stick to this person's side 24/7? Hell no. I endured your mother's verbal abuse all this time.
Besides, her injury was our own fault to begin with. Did you know that your mother is an alcoholic? Of course you didn't know, right? You were never home." My husband tries to make an excuse, saying that he had work to do. "Don't you lie to me. You were probably sleeping around with some woman named Sarah, right?"
Why do you know that?
There is a fool who hardly ever comes home. And even when he does, he reeks of perfume. Are you still telling me he's not cheating? When I became convinced of his infidelity, I immediately hired a private investigator. I already had decisive evidence, including the identity of his mistress and the frequency of their affair. I don't want to hear any more excuses or apologies. All I want is a divorce and compensation. I never want to see you or your mother again. Goodbye." Saying this, I left the hospital. As a postscript, I was able to successfully divorce my ex-husband and even received compensation from his mistress, Sarah. Thanks to a voice recorder that had captured my ex-mother-in-law's abusive language, I was also able to receive compensation from her. As for my ex-husband, he was fired from his job due to his affair with a subordinate. My ex-mother-in-law struggled to recover from her alcoholism for a while, but she eventually relapsed due to the stress caused by her son losing his job. according to their neighbors. The two of them always reeked of alcohol and were often inebriated to the point where they couldn't even have a proper conversation. As someone who only graduated from high school, I don't know if they teach you about the dangers of alcohol in a university. In any case, my experience has made me realize that I need to prioritize a person's character over their educational background when choosing a partner.